I just want to say we're so passionate about classic movies.
We're going to expand the conversation.
You can see the passion that's in this room.
It's thrilling to the core.
Put a new spin on some vintage films.
It's classic movies and more.
How you doing? I'm Rob Madaska from Classic Movies and More, and with us today we are honored to have Professor Bernard Dick. All right, and we're going to cover his latest work, The Screen is Red: Hollywood, Communism, and the Cold War. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
For our viewers, could you talk a little bit about the book?
Yes, actually, it deals with the way Hollywood approached communism beginning in the late 1940s and really was responsible for creating a lot of the Cold War paranoia. I mean, you had the feeling that there were communists everywhere. Mm-hmm. There was a very famous television show called I've Got Three Wives. One of the episodes on I've Got Three Wives, which starred Richard Carlson, had two very elderly women on rocking chairs calling each other comrade. So, I mean, you think, well, you know, your next door neighbor could be a communist. I mean, a kindergarten teacher could be a communist. Anybody could be a communist. Wow. And I think they did pretty much what they did during the 1940s, where Hollywood tried to convince everyone that America was honeycombed with saboteurs, with Nazi spies, they could be absolutely anyone. You know, those posters on walls, loose lips sink ships, you know, and all of that. And
wow. Why was that, do you think? It was a part government?
Well, part of it was, again, you know, paranoia. I mean, once Pearl Harbor was bombed, I mean, in February, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and we're celebrating the anniversary of it now, President Roosevelt signed that executive order, which resulted in the internment of Japanese Americans in internment camps throughout the West. Very, very remote areas, too. Very remote areas. So, yes, and the movies propagated the idea that, you know, the Japanese on the West Coast were going to spray arsenic on the crops and they were going to pollute the waters and that they were a real menace. The irony of it is that there was no act of enemy-directed sabotage committed in the United States during World War II.
Wow. But what made you gravitate towards this specifically?
Well, I gravitated towards this because one of the most traumatic moments in my childhood was picking up the Scranton Times one day and discovering that Larry Parks, whom I adored in the Jolson story, had been a communist. And I thought, oh my God, you know, Larry Parks.
So it affected you even then?
Well, then, and you know, going to church every Sunday, sermons on godless, atheistic, which actually is a redundancy because godless is atheistic. Communism, and you know, and hearing these stories from GIs who had served in World War II, saying, "Oh, the communists, you know, when they come here, they're going to rape your mother before your eyes," and that sort of thing. I mean, you know, the fear of God was literally rammed into you. However, it was very difficult for me because the name doesn't indicate this, but I am Lithuanian, and I grew up in an Eastern European neighborhood, and we had Russians across the street, Russians next door to us. You know, when people were going on about the Russians, I mean, these were not the people I knew. And when I grew up, at least in where we lived, nobody used the word Soviet. It was always the Russians. And even throughout school, people were going on about the Russians this and the Russians that. That it just became ingrained in my mind. And seeing these movies like The Iron Curtain, The Red Danube, The Red Menace, you know, all of these, because I went to the movies regularly, sometimes 3 times a week, and constantly being hit with these stories about communist subversion and everything else. And then what really did it for me was in 1947 when the House Un-American Activities Committee began its investigation. And I realized that there was something wrong here. people were being vilified, people were losing their jobs because of their beliefs. And the irony of it is, some of them had stopped belonging to the Communist Party, who were members of the Hollywood 10, but they still wanted to take a stand against HUAC. And it was a very naive but noble stand. They decided to take the First Amendment and stand by their rights of freedom of expression rather than take the Fifth, because if you took the Fifth, I mean, it was obvious that you were concealing something, and you still would have been blacklisted. You wouldn't have gone to jail if you took the Fifth consecutively, but you wouldn't have a job. But they decided to take the First, and what they wanted to do is to deliver their statements first. They came with prepared statements which they wanted to read. But J. Parnell Thomas, who was chair of the committee, would not allow them to read the statement and just answer the question, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And they wouldn't answer the question. So that resulted in a contempt of Congress citation. A year sentence. They didn't serve, none of them served an actual year. But still, their careers were ruined. Except for Dalton Trumbull. He worked on the blacklist and then made a comeback in 1960, with Spartacus for Kirk Douglas, and also for Exodus for Otto Preminger. So, he came off very well.
Speaking some of the movies, could you tell our viewers some of the films that are covered in the book?
Yes, there's a whole chapter on the Korean War movies, and I cover The Iron Curtain, 1948, The Red Danube, which is a very interesting film. That was 1949, MGM.
Why is it interesting?
It's interesting because you have the character played by Janet Leigh. She is a ballerina. She is about to be expatriated to, either Russia or some Eastern European country. It wouldn't have mattered where, but she's taken refuge in Vienna, and nobody can do anything for her. She's living in a convent, and rather than go back to her home country, which would be behind the Iron Curtain, of course, she commits suicide. She throws herself out of the convent window. Now, the Legion of Decency, which was very big in those days, had a real animus against movies with suicide. I mean, you were considered to be a steward of your body, and when the Lord decides to take you, it's when you go. So nobody really knew what to do about this. I mean, the script called for her to commit suicide. You can't have a happy ending. So what they do is have her, as she is dying, and Ethel Barrymore is playing the Mother Superior, who's at her side, and said, "Dear, you did an awful thing. You committed a serious sin." And she said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Well, the Legion had no problem with it. But in All My Sons, for example, when Edward G. Robinson commits suicide, morally objectionable in part for all because it condones suicide. On the other hand, in a classic movie like Julius Caesar, where both Brutus and Cassius commit suicide, where Brutus falls on Strato's sword, it's Shakespeare, what the hell,
So they can get away with it.
Oh,
yes,
it's Shakespeare, yeah.
That's phenomenal. What's the time frame again that you covered from when to when? Because I know there's a lot of movies.
Actually, I go from 1947 to the mid-60s, but then I pick up at the end with this fascinating television program, which is now going to go in its third, and I'm sorry to say, from what I hear, last year, The Americans.
Okay.
In which you have Kerry Russell and Matthew Rhys playing actually a Soviet couple. They were planted here. They were sleeper spies. This setting is the 1980s. And what is unusual about the series is that although they do go around killing people, I mean, it's part of their job description. But you like them. That's what Hollywood can actually do. And, in this day and age, when we talk about empathy and compassion and so on and so forth, which I think are terribly overused words, Hollywood did make you empathize with people that under ordinary circumstances you wouldn't empathize with. I remember as a child seeing High Sierra with Humphrey Bogart, and there's that scene at the end when his dog falls out of Ida Lupino's embrace and starts running up the mountain where he is holed up. I thought to myself, somebody killed that damn dog because he's going to come out and he's going to be a target for the police down there and they're going to shoot. And I was hoping that he would make it, but he didn't. But the way he fell, I mean, was so glorious. It was beautiful to watch him. I mean, it was a real tragic fall, you know.
No, it's a great movie. It's amazing how Hollywood could paint pictures just from the storylines and just from the actual actors who were in them.
Yes, because Bogart was a very sympathetic character. I mean, he does pay for the Joan Leslie character because she has a club foot to have an operation. And of course, when he comes back to see her, she's dancing up a storm and she pays absolutely no attention whatsoever to him. Which I think is an extremely moving and very sad scene. But, you know, and even in the Americans, I mean, you're really, in a sense, rooting for them. And the plot lines are so exciting because they have a daughter who's very intelligent. Her name is Paige. She is onto what they're doing, but she actually decides to become a Christian. And I'm wondering, where is this going to go? They're toying with the idea of recruiting her. The wife, the Kerry Russell character, is all for it. The husband is not. Well, the husband, we're not even sure they're married, you know.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely gripping, and they're a family. And you see, I think that's why The Godfather was such an important film, because even though it was R-rated, it was a family movie because it was about a family. All right, you say it's a crime family, so what? I mean, the end of it, all right, so a hit is going on while a baby is being baptized, but you know, that's the irony of it. That's the irony of it. But you could actually feel for the Corleone family. And you sort of ignore the fact that what they do. I mean, it's not really important. They're
incidental at that point.
They're people. They're human beings. They're human beings. So, yeah.
Well, do you think a lot of that is spills over into the book as far as how these were quote unquote supposed to be the bad guys, but now Hollywood has either intentionally or unintentionally made these sympathetic characters?
Well, yeah, they have become sympathetic characters, not so much in Hollywood, because throughout the 50s, 60s, I mean, you really did not have a sympathetic communist. What you would have in certain movies like The Red Menace is people who joined the Communist Party for various reasons, a lot of which involved sheer camaraderie, the idea of somebody calling one another a comrade, you know, and it just... And also, let's face it, another reason was to meet girls. And if you saw the Majestic with Jim Carrey, you know, when he was called before the committee, he said, well, you know, why did he wasn't a communist, but he would go to these cell meetings. He said, I was a horny young man.
And you can't blame the guy for that. How research? How did you conduct your research? How did you piece this together?
Well, there are production files, you know, in Los Angeles at the Margaret Herrick Library. Also, the University of Southern California has a 20th Century Fox collection, and also the Warner collection. So but there's no substitute for seeing the movies. I mean, you have to see them. I was fortunate in a sense because I grew up with these movies, so it wasn't as if I was coming to all of them cold, but I still had to see them.
No.
Even if I had seen them before.
There's no substitute as far as sitting in a theater with other people and experiencing
Oh, and that's how I experienced them, but I mean, you know, fat chance today.
I know, it's difficult because everything is so... solo. Everybody can watch things solo. You can see things on your phone. It's no longer an experience like it was when these movies were out.
Yes. Well, I mean, even going to the movies in the 40s this is when I first started to go to the movies. I mean, you know, when Hitler would appear on the screen in a newsreel, people would boo. And when FDR, they would cheer,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, it was a real group experience.
Well, how do you think it's? I mean, you went through it. Did it kind of craft society, how it was, how we felt, our morals, our beliefs?
Well, I think it captured how certainly we felt about the enemy in those days. I mean, when I was growing up, this would have been about 43, 44. I mean, we played, well, it wasn't exactly a game, but we used to debate among ourselves. If the Allies didn't win the war, who would you want to win it? And we all agreed the Germans. And this was based exclusively on what we saw in the movies because, I mean, the Japanese, my God. I remember in 1942 seeing Manila Calling, in which you have these two Filipino men wandering through the jungle, and they arrive at an American outpost. One of them has had his eyes gouged out, the other one has had his tongue pulled out, and this was done by the Japanese. And then, behind the rising sun, I mean, they were sticking bamboo shoots on your fingernails and gang raping women. You know, I mean, I'm a coward when it comes to physical pain, but at least the Germans would line you up against the wall and shoot you.
So much easier to go that way.
And you would say "Vive la liberté" or whatever. I mean, it was there was something romantic about dying like that.
What are some of your favorite movies in the book?
Well, I think my favorite is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold with Richard Burton and Claire Bloom, in which Burton played a agent, and he becomes involved with Claire Bloom, who was actually a communist, but she became a communist because she believed that the communists believe in the universal brotherhood and all of that. Control, which is the name for whoever it is who is Burton's handler, wants Burton back, but he is encumbered now because of Claire Bloom. So the East Germans drive the two of them. They think they're both going to escape, go over the wall, and end up happily in England. And they are instructed, start climbing the wall, go over to your own side, go over to the west. As they are climbing the wall, a shot rings out, and it's for Claire Bloom. They don't want Claire Bloom. And Burton, and I think he did a beautiful job of acting in that, when he realizes this is a setup, that they only want him, and that the woman that he loves is now at the bottom of the wall, he starts coming down. And the guard says, go back, go back. He won't go back. The guard shoots him. And the final scene is the two of them dead at the foot of the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
It's a powerful ending.
Powerful, powerful stuff. In closing, what is the message you most wanted to get across to people who read your book?
That the HUAC investigation, now known as the witch hunt, was really unconstitutional. People were sacrificed, careers were damaged. Marsha Hunt, who was a very good actress, and she wasn't even a communist. She was gray-listed. But what did that mean? It means that as far as Hollywood is concerned, you're washed up. So you could work in the theater, of course, because theater people are far more magnanimous, certainly, than the people in Hollywood. Also, there were two suicides which should never have happened. One did not involve anyone in the in show business or the film industry. He was a scholar of American literature, F.O. Mathiasson, a Harvard professor, not a communist but a socialist, and also gay. Now, he sensed in 1950 that he was going to be targeted, and in a state of acute depression, he checked into a hotel in Boston and threw himself out of the window. Now, if you're familiar with the movie The Front, Zero Mostel plays a character who is actually the star of a kiddie show on television. But, he has a checkered past because he marched in the May Day parade, he subscribed to the Daily Worker, what have you. Anyway, he would not name names. That's the only way, of course, he would be able to save his career. But he explains to the television producer, who says, look, you're going to have to cooperate or I can't hire you any longer. He says, look, I was attracted to this girl who had a nice, plump ass. And that's why I went into the party. But it really had nothing to do with politics. Anyway, he realizes his career is dead. So he checks into a hotel, and you don't see him jump, but you just see the curtains billowing. The window is open. So one other example, Philip Loeb was also not a communist. And he was the star of a very popular, maybe it was certainly before your time, the Goldbergs with Gertrude Berg, Molly Goldberg, and Philip Loeb played the husband of Molly, Jake. Same situation. All right, you're not a communist, but you obviously know people who are. Go and name names. He wouldn't do it. Checked into the Hotel Taft, and with the right combination of pills and liquor, that was it.
Wow. Some powerful, powerful stuff.
Yes, a horrible era. And, look at what we're living through now.
It just shows everything comes full circle,
Yes,
doesn't
it does. It does, I have to say. Well, if you live long enough, everything's replay.
Exactly. Some things hopefully shorter than other replays,
Yeah.
All right, listen, thank you so much. Again, the book, The Screen is Red, Hollywood, Communism, and the Cold War. I'm Rob Madaska for Classic Movies and More, and we'll see you next time.